Good afternoon, everyone. We have with us today Ms. Paroma Chatterjee. She is a seasoned FinTech and banking professional. She's graduated from IIM Lucknow, and then she's been with banks like ICICI Bank and Kotak Mahindra Bank, and thereafter with Flipkart, Lending Cart, and now you're heading the India operations of Revolut, which is one of Europe's leading FinTech businesses companies. So yeah, happy to have you with us today, especially someone like you who's been featured as one of FinTech's top 100 women by FinTech magazine consistently, in fact, many years. So we thought it'd be a good opportunity to get your thoughts on the FinTech sector. And so you've been heading the India operations now, and you've been in banking, you've seen e-commerce, you've seen FinTech, and over many years. So if you look at the last 20 years or so, what would you see as one significant trend or change that has really happened in this space?
Just one.
Okay, if you want to, please.
I mean, if you're talking about the last 2 decades, I think the world has transformed, and with it, banking and financial services. If I had to talk about what stands out for me, it's actually across different fronts. One front is technology, has completely disrupted. The second front is products. The kind of products that have come out, or the manner in which products are being given, even in banking and financial services, has significantly changed. Third, consumer behavior of what consumers adopt and how they deal with banking and their own finance. And last but not the least, even the economic power, if you look at it from a global lens.
Okay.
And I'll tell you what I mean. If I look at it from a technology lens, I think the biggest disruption over the last 2 decades has been the entire contactless payments as a concept.
Right.
2 decades ago, we were paying in cash. We were swiping cards, and that to a small percentage of the population was doing that. And we were writing checks, making out demand drafts, visiting bank branches, going to ATMs and withdrawing cash. That was the reality of banking 2 decades ago, right? From there to it has completely morphed into contactless, using people's mobile phones to make payments. That is your main source of you're making a payment. Your bank is in your phone today. Right? That is probably one of the biggest differences. Even in on-the-spot payments, you have the tap and goes, where you can just tap your mobile phone. It's going further to you can tap your smartwatch, you can tap a payment ring. So it's just contactless payments is probably the biggest technology disruptor that has happened in this sector. That is on the front end, which is consumer facing. At the back end, I think the biggest technology shift has been blockchain.
Okay.
Blockchain as a technology which didn't exist 2 decades ago. What blockchain has enabled, and if you look at it in conjunction with things like cryptocurrency, what it has enabled is essentially a completely digital, independent, intermediary-less way of doing digital transactions. Right, which doesn't need to be pegged to a currency, etc., etc. So I think those two have really disrupted the technology world of banking and finance. Coming to how products are given, I think the biggest change that has happened is it has moved away from the bank being a destination where you go to take a product to the jargon is embedded finance, but that probably is it, which is banking and finance and payments seamlessly getting into the everyday life. Like you order a cab or a ride-hailing service, you get into the cab, you get out. The payment gets settled from behind, right? You order food from somewhere, likewise, the food reaches, payment gets settled from somewhere. So finance getting embedded into your everyday consumer behavior is, I think, the manner in which product is being given to the consumer has drastically shifted from consumers having to go to a bank as a destination to avail of a product. That, I think, is the biggest change in how product is being offered over the last 2 decades in this sector. Coming to consumer behavior, I think we all talk about it. The entire digital adoption, which has been accelerated by COVID as well, has taken the world by storm. How the new generation have become digital natives to look at adopting digital as their first go-to way of making payments is, I think, one of the biggest standout in consumer behavior difference in the last 2 decades. The other interesting thing that I have observed is a move away from savings towards investments.
Okay.
I mean, 2 decades ago when we started our careers, the entire advice that our parents gave us was to save as much as you can out of your salary. And your salary was divided into 2 components, how much you spent and how much you saved. Investment was a very evolved word at that time, which you came to later on when you had enough money, etc., etc. Today, I think investments has become mainstream. And the orientation to save has proportionately gone down, which has also been accelerated by changes in interest rate regimes, etc., etc. But today, a youngster, fresh out of campus, starting to work with their first salary, they will look at what component they're going to spend, what component they're going to invest. Save is just what is lying in the bank account, which they've not figured out what to do with yet. I think that's another fundamental change in the orientation of people when it comes to spending. And the last point that I was saying was the whole economic power. So when we started our careers, we still looked to the West, even in terms of finance and banking. But I think over the last 2 decades, the power has pretty firmly shifted to the Orient and the global South. It started with M-Pesa from Africa, in Kenya, being the first flag bearer of mobile payments, to GCash in Indonesia, to a Pix in Brazil, and of course our own homegrown UPI has taken the entire world by storm. So that has led to the economic power in the banking and financial services world also shifting to the Orient and the global South. So I can keep going on and on about this, but I think these are the large trends which I've seen completely flip over in the last 2 decades.
Thanks a lot for that. I mean, that kind of covered a wide range of things, and all of them are important things. Maybe, asking you to pick one thing over 20 years is a little unfair because there's so many things happening there. But since you mentioned power shifting to the global South, and you did mention the UPI, and we are justifiably proud of it as Indians and so on. But if you had to go beyond UPIs, are there other things that come to mind? Other things that as Indians or India is doing well in on the FinTech side? Could there be any other developments which have happened or are on the horizon that you'd like to talk about?
Okay, I wouldn't completely write off UPI, but I want to give a different angle to it. I think more than just the sheer value of UPI, I think what we should be really proud of is not just the scale. Scale can happen in a nation of 1.6 billion people, but the speed at which that change has happened. If you think about it, in 2014, right, there were total 20 million digital transactions, right? Sorry, consumers who have ever done a digital transaction. From there to today, 350 million people within a decade getting into digital payments. I think that speed with which the nation has progressed is something to be proud of. And the other drivers, if you leave aside UPI, I think the first one is sheer internet penetration. Today, out of the 1.6 billion Indians, which includes a 1-year-old baby to a 90-year-old senior citizen, there are 900 million Indians out of that 1.6 billion who are online. The entire internet penetration of internet accessibility from the smallest of rural towns and internet adoption of everyone, agnostic of region or language, is the other phenomenon of note, which creates the rails on which to distribute multiple products, whether it is financial services or e-commerce or healthcare or education or anything, using internet as a rail to disseminate that. I think that's the other second thing to be absolutely proud of and think about that as a true phenomenon. The third is, it's like, I spoke about the internet penetration. The third would be the adoption, which is, today if you're 87% of adult Indians actually use some form of FinTech or the other, which is the largest by far in the world, even ahead of China, which is a higher population than ours, and ahead of the US, which was considered to be ahead on the tech development spectrum. But we're the country where the consumers have the largest percentage of adoption of digital products. That's the third aspect to think about and be proud of again. And Within that, if you look at beyond payments anyway, we spoke about UPI, it is the blessed child of India. But I think from UPI lens, UPI internationalization is the other big thing that is happening, where it's not just about within India, but being able to use those rails to send and receive money from other countries where UPI is accepted in those corridors. That I think will be the other bigger thing that India is looking at driving. The other lens is digital lending, which we don't often speak about as much. But back in 2018, we actually disseminated as an industry $75 billion worth of loans digitally. And that, it's not just that, it's pegged to cross 750 billion by 2030. That's the pace at which digital lending is growing. So taking a loan or getting access to a loan, even if it is a small ticket size loan for multiple use cases, I think that's another phenomenon that's happening, which is making capital available for people, which is encouraging entrepreneurship, which is encouraging particularly the small and medium entrepreneurs. And that I think is a very, very healthy phenomenon that's going on again. And if you package the whole thing together, you see the impact on the GDP. Right? Just in 2018, not 2018, let me tell you, 2022, 8% of India's GDP came from digital businesses. 2025, we've crossed 20% of India's GDP is digital businesses. So all of this has gone into making the digital ecosystem the biggest and fastest contributor. So if you think about the GDP growth that's happening from India, that is being driven now by the digital businesses. And some of these 4 or 5 things are things that I think are ancillary to think about it in that context and be really, really proud of being an Indian, building for India, building for the world out of India. It's just the moment and the place to be.
Right. That's nice angle, right? It's not just about Indian companies and Indian banks and Indian FinTech firms doing things. It's also the Indian consumer who has adopted this wholeheartedly and very
Most
eagerly.
Exactly. That's what's facilitated all of this growth.
It's wonderful. That's a nice angle. Thanks.
And not just since we spoke about the consumers, the other angle is also the Indian employee. On the one hand, consumers have started adopting it. On the other hand, Indian youngsters, and the demographic in India is also changing towards the youth, but the Indian youngsters are showcasing their talent. The STEM, we're sitting in one of these institutes right now, right? But the Indian engineer, the Indian management graduate is making their presence felt on the world scene. They're helping build for the world from here. So that's the other thing to be proud of. I think I need to look for a synonym for the word proud now.
So just a little while back, you were talking about not having to walk into a bank, embedded banking and so on. But that's been a big disruptor for the traditional bank. You know that they're trying to respond, but what is it that you see the traditional banks doing and or having already done or in the process of doing or will do going forward?
For that, I think you need to speak with a traditional banker. Because actually, I spent the first half of my career in traditional banking and the latter half in FinTech. And one of the things that I observe was, don't take it otherwise, but traditional banks are a little captive of their legacy systems. It's not easy to throw out your legacy systems overnight, but they are clunky. And the pace at which, like we spoke about, technology has changed, it's very difficult to keep pace. So I think there needs a complete shuffle and a reorientation. So your mass-based banking, your small ticket banking, whether it is payments or it is lending or it is investments, all of that, I actually think that technology firms can do a lot better in today's world, fintechs, and faster, and more cost effectively, and more coolly in terms of user experience for the new age consumer. I think where the banks can still have an edge is more where the touch and feel is needed, which is the high-end private banking segment, where you still need individualized, personalized attention, customized high ticket size decisions, and therefore longer gestation period conversations, corporate banking, larger deals like lending to enterprises, corporates, and the core treasury management and the backbone of maintaining and moving funds and settlements. I think that's the space where the banks can do the best because of the trust and their phenomenal scale advantage. And I think they should morph towards making that their skill and probably leave the mass individual transaction based banking of consumers to the digitals. That I think will create an ecosystem where the two can coexist. If the two try to compete with each other, that's where the problem happens, because both have their own skill sets or strengths, and that's how I think it should evolve.
The fact that technologies are moving very rapidly, the market is growing very rapidly, the opportunities are cropping up, and so FinTech company needs to keep up with that, constantly running that, expanding very fast. At the same time, it's finance, so you got to be careful.
100%.
You got to protect against various risks.
Yeah.
How do you see FinTechs balancing out this need for capturing market opportunity with also being risk averse?
Brilliant question, actually, because one of the things that, yes, FinTechs do grapple with is what I call the need for speed. Everybody seems to be racing to be the first one to reach the consumer with a product or a solution. But balancing the need for speed, as you said, with responsibility, because at the end of the day, you're dealing with people's money, which is their hard-earned core existential money. I think in order to achieve the right balance, one needs to shift their thought process from reactive work to actually very intentional design towards that. Like, for example, one of my personal philosophies on that is to first set the frame and then innovate within that frame.
Okay.
So just to share an example, even in this organization, when I was setting it up, my first hire was my head of risk and compliance. To first set out what are the regulations, appreciate why the regulations are a certain way to protect consumer interest as well as the interest of the organization from going bankrupt. Honestly, a fraud can make an organization go bankrupt if you've not set it right. So the first thing to set is therefore that frame, then bring in bright, brilliant product managers to then innovate within that frame. I think that helps you keep that need for scale and speed along with doing it responsibly, and it is so crucial to do it right.
And then perhaps the temptation to go beyond that is something that has to be resisted.
Absolutely. I often use the sports analogy here, right? If you're going out to play a sport, you need to first know the rules of the sport. Right? If you're playing football, you need to know where the football field ends. Where the ball goes out, it's gone out. Right? Likewise in cricket, you need to know where the pitch is.
Yeah.
So if you haven't made your run back in time, you're out.
Indeed.
Right? Any sport, a tennis court, a badminton court, it's all about knowing the frame and the rules, and then play your best game.
That is very insightful. Thanks a lot. I'm sure our viewers, I enjoyed this. I hope our viewers will enjoy it too. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure having you here.
Thank you for having me here. It's delightful being here in this ambience and speaking with you. And these topics, we could keep going on and on over
Indeed,
chai
yes,
later on as well.
Indeed, yes. It's the limitations of the format we have right now. Thank you so much.
But thank you for having me. I enjoyed the conversation too.